Well, for more on this, let's speak to the Chief Director responsible for price statistics at Stats SA, Patrick Kelly. Patrick, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate you joining us this evening. Let's perhaps break it down and look at the different inflation categories and see which of those drive what we see as the end result of CPI the most. Which category should we be looking at?
Thanks very much. As your clip indicated, the transport sector really is a key driver of inflation at the moment. We know that the conflict in Iran has been pushing oil prices higher. That's been kind of volatile because it went up, it seemed to fall back a bit, and now it's gone back up. So that's a key thing. I mean, we've seen over the last 12 months a 34% increase in fuel prices, 50% in diesel and 32% in petrol. I think that what we're starting to see now is maybe a second phase impact of that. So in public transport categories that we measure, we are starting to see ticks up. So for example, I mean, overall public transport went up by 8.1% in June. Minibus taxis up 11.5% between May and June. Some of the other public transport facilities, e-hailing, so that's like your Uber and Bolt, up 8.7%. Long-distance buses up 8.4%.
Yeah. And of course, there was some reprieve that motorists and transport operators experienced at the pump in recent months up until, of course, well, in the last month and a half, maybe 2 months, up until the ceasefire came to an end effectively. How much of that do we see reflect in the data?
Yeah, I think we're still going to, there was still a marginal increase in fuel prices in June, which is the month that we're covering in this publication. July, there was some price decreases for petrol and diesel, so that will feed through next month's reading. What happens after that, I think, is anyone's guess.
Yeah. How much of that, in the inflationary rally that we see with transport spilled over into, food production costs, and how much of what we see having gone up in food production costs went up independent of the transport inflationary impact?
Yeah, so at the moment, I think we're not really seeing what we might call maybe a third round impact, onto those goods that use fuel for their transportation. I think that may still come down the line. So actually at the moment, food inflation is very much under control. It came in at 1.6% for food and non-alcoholic beverages. That's actually the lowest reading that we've had since November 2010. So almost 16 years. So that's mainly attributable to two main subcategories within food. Cereals, which is kind of your staples like bread and maize meal and the like, which are at negative 1.5, so that's in deflation. And meat, which had been quite high earlier in the year, meat inflation hit 13.5% in January on the back of foot and mouth disease that impacted cattle.
Yeah.
That's now down at 5.1%.
What are your models telling you about what the next couple of months or the next couple of quarters look like? And I'm asking this because the Reserve Bank Monetary Policy Committee will largely rely on them.
Yeah, so we leave all the modelling and predictions up to those good folk at the Monetary Policy Committee. But I think that, if we just look a little bit forward, in the next month, July, we will be bringing into the calculation the updates on municipal tariffs. Electricity charges, water and the like. Those are typically above average inflation, and so we'll have to see how that impacts the overall number. I think obviously looking at the war in Iran is very difficult to predict what's going to happen there. But at the moment, if oil prices remain at the level that they are, that will continue to have a massive impact on fuel prices locally.
Yeah.
I think maybe just looking a little bit further out at food inflation, as we've discussed, food inflation is pretty low at the moment, but I think there is a risk, going into the next summer season. The weather people are telling us we're going to be having an El Nino climate weather phenomenon, which brings less rain to the Southern African region. So depending on how bad that is, if we go into drought conditions, that'll obviously affect the harvest, the supply of food products, and consequently the price.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. That's Patrick Kelly, who's the Chief Director for Price Statistics at Stats South Africa. Let's take a short break. Stay with us.